Welcome in. This is episode number one of Calibrated Map Updates. For those of you who follow my live streams, you know that I usually do my Ukraine war mapping updates during my live stream. However, recently I found that the vibe and the flow of the live stream works a lot better when I just cut out the whole mapping portion. So the map will now be a standalone video on my YouTube page. All of the mapping updates will be done through recorded videos. The live streams will be free form and more flowy. And that's just sort of how I've been enjoying doing it. The audience also, you guys seem to like it. So that is how I'm going to continue doing it. Thank you so much for your understanding. And I hope you enjoy the map updates for September the 15th, 2025. Without further ado, let's go ahead and head over to the map. All right, we have a ton of updates across the entirety of the front line. Starting up in the Sumy region, the village of Yanikivka has been entirely captured by Russian forces. We're going to make this a little bit bigger for you guys. This is not a major update, and the Ukrainians are still pushing incredibly forcefully on this edge of the Sumy buffer zone region. So there's a lot of combat still happening over here. But on this side, Russian forces have completed the capture of Yanikivka. All right, moving down to the Kupiansk area. This is the, by the thumbnail, you can tell that this is sort of the bulk update. It's not the biggest update, surprisingly, of this video. However, this is the area where I believe we are seeing the most impactful changes happening in this particular front line compared to anywhere else. We're also going to talk about the Zaporozhye Dnipropetrovsk region in a little bit, where we are also seeing a hefty amount of Russian movement. But first, we will look at the Kupiansk region. So we've had reports of Russian advances over in this edge of the pocket, the Kupiansk pocket here to the north, around Stepova Novosilka. This entire area is fraught with gray zone and is very poorly reported on, I would say, in my opinion. So there's not a clear defined front line here. Something to this nature is what's going on in this region, but all of the mappers sort of disagree on what exactly is happening over here. But all of the mappers are agreeing on what is happening in Kupiansk itself. So for this update, we have a large Russian advance down the eastern bank of the Oskil River into the eastern portion of Kupiansk. This is a pretty significant update. There is Russian control in this hospital area in this sort of northern suburb of eastern Kupiansk. I know that's sort of confusing. Obviously, the Oskil River here divides the two. So you have sort of a split battle happening here, if that makes sense. On one side, you have the Russians who are maintaining a bridgehead over the Oskil River and pushing into the northern portions of Kupiansk. On the eastern bank of the river, you have the Ukrainians who are holding their bridgehead across the Oskil River, and the Russians who are pushing that bridgehead into a smaller and more restricted pocket. So this is quite a big advance. And also, just so everybody is aware, there have been numerous pipe operations. We've seen this in the past where Russian forces will use sewer pipes to advance. They did it in Avdiivka. They did it in Torsk, or Toretsk, sorry. And now we're seeing it in the Kupiansk region. So there are sewer pipes and other infrastructure pipes that are being used by the Russians to transport logistics, not only across the river, but also into specific areas. So if the map isn't always clearly defined or you don't understand how logistics work, sometimes there are hidden things happening on the battlefield that you're not necessarily going to know about. And one of those is the Russian use of mines and tunnels and pipes to both infiltrate and supply specific positions. So that is what is happening here in the Kupiansk region. and very important to watch. More important than this advance here, I've said for a long time that I believe that this bridgehead needs to just be evacuated by the Ukrainians. There's no real point in holding it. I said that before the Russians were on this side of the Oskil River. I thought backing out of this and holding Western Kupiansk and holding the entirety of the Oskil River was going to be the easier line to defend. What the Ukrainians are now looking at is a secured Russian bridgehead across the Oskil River. They're still maintaining this pocket, which is now being closed and is in extreme jeopardy. The main logistics line through Kupiansk is now not usable because of how close combat is. And the only remaining crossings over the Oskil River into this pocket are basically where they have forded the river. So you push gravel or dirt into the any sort of tight area of the river, and it allows you to get vehicles across it. We've seen multiple videos of Russian glide bombs striking these temporary, or maybe not temporary river crossings, because they can be permanent. Eventually, I think they would be washed away, but if they're regularly maintained, they're a permanent river crossing. However, it's not permanent like a bridge. It's temporary like a pontoon. So we've seen multiple of these sand or gravel crossings get hit. Also, pontoon bridges getting hit. So this pocket is getting extremely tight for the Ukrainians, and it has to do with the Russian advances inside of Western Kupiansk itself. Now, we've known that the Russian forces have been operating in Moskova and down to Sobolivka. But now we have further confirmation that the Russians have advanced down almost to the crossing from western to eastern Kupiansk. And this includes a majority of the high-rise buildings in northern Kupiansk. This is very, very, very bad for the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are now going to be looking at defending behind the Kupianka River right here, which runs just down along this roadway, this railway line into the river. That's going to be southwestern Kupiansk, is going to be the last area that is really held by the Ukrainians. And more importantly than this, once Kupiansk falls entirely, but more specifically, once northern Kupiansk falls, the ability for the Ukrainians to hold this pocket is going to not only be completely worthless from a Ukrainian perspective, but incredibly costly from the Ukrainian perspective. So I would expect that this is going to now be forcefully evacuated, when previously I said that it should have been voluntarily evacuated. So again, this is a big, big update for the Russians in the Kupiansk region, and this is a very, very bad sign for the Ukrainian defenders who are trying to hold it. And let me remind you that the front line doesn't get any better any further back, right? Holding the Oskil River here is the ideal line. There's a reason why the Ukrainians are holding it so aggressively. And behind it, there's just not a lot for them to defend. The Russians are, once Kupiansk falls, once the Oskil River line is pretty much leveled, the Russians are very easily going to be able to step into places like Izum, step into places like Limans, step into places like Seversk. You're going to see a massive frontline update that is going to basically follow the Oskil River all the way down to the bottom of the Seversk pocket. And in fact, I will make a prediction line right now. I do this sometimes in my videos and in my live streams, which I no longer do the map updates in my live streams. But for those of you who have watched in the past, then you know that I will make these prediction lines to sort of show where the Russians are likely going to push and where the front line is likely going to be, just to give you guys an explanation for future scenarios. So I'm just going to follow the Oskil River here all the way down. And then we are going to follow, there's another river here, the Severodonetsk. We're going to go down to here, and then here, and then here, and then here. Boom, 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 boom. We're going to follow this river all the way down. It doesn't have to be perfect, just sort of following the river line. You guys get the idea. Bang, bang, boom. We get more down into the Seversk area here. And then once we get to Seversk, it's going to follow the Bakhmutivka River down, and that divides Seversk in half. And then we follow the Bakhmutovka River down to where the front line currently is. And boom, there we go. So this is my newest prediction. This is where the front line should level here relatively soon. I'm going to make this a color like that. And then I'm going to move that prediction down into my little prediction category, which I have to open up. Where did I put it? Oh, right there. Boom. There you go. What is this polygon? Why did that get put there? Okay, don't want that. All right. So there is the new line. This is my upcoming predictions. And just for some of you, so you can see, this was one of my previous upcoming predictions. It has basically now been fully completed by the Russian forces here around Konstantinivka. That one's pretty obvious. Here you can see the line where the Russian forces are going to follow the railway line north of Chasiv Yar to Azivka. That will be the beginning of the encirclement of Konstantinivka. This is the line that I was making when the breakthrough was happening over here, but it still really does represent the area that the Russians will eventually capture once the city of Pokrovsk is completed. The capture is completed, and the Russians are able to push out. So this is sort of the flower that you're going to see out of Pokrovsk after Pokrovsk. And then down here, I'm going to actually delete this line now. Russian forces have completed the capture of the Vovocha line, which is very, very important. And you can see how much the Russians have been advancing down in the southern pocket. So we're going to now delete that line. That prediction is complete. All right. Cool, cool. We're going to hide that and get back into these updates. All right, so coming down from the Kupyansk line, we are now in the Limans sector. And guys, there is a lot happening here. We're going to head over to Shenderlove, where Russian forces have encircled the village. It is reported that there is an active encirclement of Ukrainian forces. It's unknown how many are actually in this area. I wouldn't say more than a couple platoons at most, just defending this area. But as you can see, the Russians are quickly progressing towards the Seversky Donetsk Canal here, which is exactly where I had put my upcoming prediction line. As you can see, obviously, back over here is where it's going to be once the Russians reach the Oskil. But in the short term, cutting off this road from Yorova down to Liman and, preventing any Ukrainian movement from the Izum direction towards Liman is incredibly important for the Russians. Going to get rid of that now. We can see here that the Russian forces have advanced north of Stavki, and this is also extremely important because of the topographical high ground right here. And I'm actually going to take you over to the topographical map, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about, because this is of vital importance for the Ukrainians to hold Stavki right now in the defense of Liman. So I'm going to take you over to the topographical map, and we're going to take a look at that real fast. Liman, Stavki. Okay, let me go over to this and make this a little bit bigger. Boop, there you go. Okay, so here we can see Liman down here in the low ground along the river line, not very beneficial for defense. We can see Shenderlove up here, which is encircled by Russian forces. You can see how the territory from Shenderlove to the Severodonetsk Canal is downhill and in the low ground. Again, beneficial for the Russians, who dominate the high ground. But as we zoom in here, we can see that Russian forces are advancing along the high ground through these fields. And once they capture Stavki and they control all of this high ground, there will be almost no way that the Ukrainians are going to be able to maintain their positions in Liman while needing to cross the Severodonetsk Canal. So that is why I made that my prediction line for my upcoming predictions, and why the movements through fields, while they don't appear particularly important, can actually be of significant importance. All right, back over to the map. Again, just a small Russian advance here near Mirne. There is a large Ukrainian fortification in this region that is likely going to fall here soon. So you can see the Russians beginning to encircle it. The Ukrainian defense of this area is going to be difficult, as the Russians have already captured most of Zesherin or Zareshine. I never know how to pronounce this town. But there is a large Ukrainian fortification in this area that the Ukrainians are still maintaining positions in. Might be in the gray zone now, but after that falls, the Russians should be able to push into Stavki, and then they will dominate the entire high ground north of Liman, which is going to make holding Liman very difficult. To complicate that issue even further, Russian forces have completely captured the entirety of the Serbiansky forestry now, unless you count this as part of the forestry, which I guess you could. But the main bulk of the forest here south of Kremenna has now completely come under Russian control. This is very important because let me do this. This is very important because it means that the Russians now have the Severodonetsk River as their sort of their front line. It makes operations incredibly easy towards Liman. It makes logistics from Kremenna very, very easy through this entire region to Zesherin. And then eventually the push towards Liman will be facilitated through the capture of this entire forest. Specifically, and in sort of a meme way, Russian forces have captured the ostrich farm here, which was a major joke during the 2022 Ukrainian counteroffensive in this region, where they ended up capturing the ostrich farm, and everybody was making jokes about it. So Russians have recaptured the ostrich farm north of Yampil, and it is reported that Russian forces have entered Yampil itself, and there is fighting ongoing in the village. This is incredibly bad. It's incredibly bad for a number of reasons. Primarily, it just means that the Russians are going to be able to utilize all of this water boundary again to slowly force the Ukrainians out of the limited urban areas, which are connected by roads. If the Russians are able to get into Yampil and secure this road that heads north to south, they will increase their logistics capabilities right outside of Liman. Again, it's going to make holding Liman very difficult. And further south here, as the Russians push into Yampil and use the Severodonetsk River and its estuary here, its delta or whatever you want to call it, swamp area, as sort of a boundary, they are also going to cut the main supply line from Liman to Seversk. And this is Seversk's main supply line. There's still the option of supplying Seversk through roads that come through this territory. But again, as I've talked about multiple times, as the Russians begin to encircle or are able to restrict logistics flow to one or two roads into a locality, it makes targeting that logistics route that much easier. It's a very target-rich environment, and it's a very crowded environment. This is the same thing, but you're condensing an entire front line's logistics into one road, which means that you can just target that road and disrupt all of the logistics in the entire area. So that is what is going to happen in Seversk, and partially why, when I did my upcoming prediction, I added the Seversk-Bakhmutivka river line in there, because the Russians will eventually push into Yampol, cut off the logistics into Seversk, and then this entire Seversk front line will just become so weak that they'll have to back up behind the Bakhmutivka River. Okay. All right. Moving down, still in the Seversk section, we have a small Russian advance here in the village of Przine. This is not particularly important. It is just another update and just showing again that the Russians are going to follow that Bakhmutivka River up to eastern Seversk and capture eastern Seversk in that manner. Okay, moving over to Konstantinivka. Not a ton of updates here. We did have a geolocation of Russian forces in these dachas right here. So this likely means that this entire pocket has closed, and I will be doing that update for the next video. if we get some confirmation. I'm just careful because some of this can be deep reconnaissance group activity, DRG activity, which can be forced out, and then I have to fix my update. So holding off just a little bit, but it should be in the next update video. Then just to the south, just a small pocket closing near Nelipivka. Not anything major again. Just advancing towards Konstantinivka. No changes on the northern Pokrovsk front. There's a lot of pro-Ukrainian noise because of deep state map, and I'll actually show you, showing that the Russians have been cut off in Kuchevi Yar for a very long time. This is just, I mean, it could be true. I'm not going to say that it's not true 100%, but deep state has been coping with this section of the map for some time. So you can see here, make it bigger. You can see here that the Ukrainian sources are claiming that the Russians are not only cut off in Kucherev Yar, but also are almost cut off down here in the south. This is just not how the situation is playing out at all. I don't know what this mapping is or where this mapping is coming from, but everybody around the deep state apparatus is trying to stay on narrative and kind of make it look this way, and it's very odd and goofy and makes no sense. And just so you guys know that this is not something that is new that has happened, I'll just zoom in on this. I'll just click back here a couple days until you can see it change. Okay, so still, even as it changes here on the 6th of September, it is still cut off. I'm just going to back it up a little bit. Still cut off. Still cut off. Now we're in the 15th of August, so over a month ago. Okay. Yeah, so the 15th of August, right there. So over a month, the Ukrainian sources have been saying that the Russians are cut off here in Kuchevi Yar. So either the Ukrainians are the most incompetent army in the world and can't, put this to rest because the Russians are so cut off. Either that or the map is lying, and I tend to believe that the map is lying because it is controlled by the Ukrainian government. So why wouldn't they lie? And this is what they're saying the situation is right now, which is not really that far off of the situation I have. I just don't have this line right here that makes no sense. Like, God honest, come over to my map and you can see that it's almost the exact same, just without the extra little coat part. Like, there's just no, this is just not cut off. The Russians are maintaining positions here. The Ukrainians are admitting the Russians are maintaining positions here, and everything else is almost the same. I think Deep State gives a little bit more territory to the Ukrainians in Verkhovna Marivka, but I'm pretty sure this entire area down here is just in gray zone. And they talk about how this entire pocket right here is just a killing field for the Ukrainians. So again, it's not really it's the only area that the pro-Ukrainian sources are focusing on, and still nothing really good is happening. So it's interesting. A small advance here for the Russians, just east of Minhorod. It's just the backside of this pocket closing, right? The logistics is so constrained. The back part of the pocket is going to become the weakest. Soon, this is also going to fall, and you're going to see the Ukrainians doing a heavy urban defense in the actual city of Pokrovsk and Minhorod. These outer lying regions will not hold as well, especially down here just to the south of Minhorod. All right, heading over to the big updates, guys. This is where a lot of the advances are happening for the Russians. This is where the Ukrainians are experiencing an immense amount of complications in their front line. So just off rip, the Vovocha River line, as I had talked about earlier, I had made that prediction, has been completely captured by Russian forces now. This includes the village of Andrivka, Kletsevo, and Oleks Andrahad. Again, this was sort of gray zone area, so not a massive Russian advance here. Now to the south, This is the Russians advancing into Dnipropetrovsk region. For those of you who don't know, the orange is just a separation of oblasts, so you can tell the difference. This is the Dnipropetrovsk region. This is the Donetsk region, right? All of the original 4 oblasts are in the red color. New oblasts have a different color. So you can see up here, a little bit of Dnipropetrovsk has been captured by the Russians. And then down here, you can see the Russians beginning to actually push heavily and explode into the Dnipropetrovsk region, as well as the Zaporozhye region here. So Russian forces have advanced along the Vovocha line here, Vovocha River, have entered the village and captured the entirety of the village of Sosnivka. They have also advanced through the fields right here, capturing the village of Ternove and capturing the village of Berezove. Moving down to the south, Russian forces have captured the village of Novomikhailivka, which is just north of the Zaporozhye border, still in Dnipropetrovsk. Now we are into Zaporozhye. You can see this little dividing line here. This is the new oblast, sort of like states for Americans, just a territory. Russian forces have captured the village of Obratane and have entered the village of Novo-Ivanivka. And then down here to the south in the Zaporozhye region again, Russian forces have captured the village of Holivsky. So this is multiple Russian advances all combined into one. You can see how the entire front line is beginning to move west towards the villages of Pokrovsk, Dobropila, and most importantly, the crossroad village of Holyai-Polye. And I think that most of this work that is happening over here is going to facilitate the capture or the encirclement of Holyai-Polye in the coming months. The Russian forces will likely advance down this road right here, and then eventually will try to cross over and cut the road running through Dobropila down to Holyai-Polye, thus cutting off most of the logistics into the city, and the Russians will capture it the same way they did with Velika Novosilka right here. And as you can see, what happened with Velika Novosilka, another crossroad village, the Russians captured it, then they used all of those roads, and they used it as a logistics hub to then push out into all of this empty area. So the next Russian goal will be the city of Proesnaya. This is going to be a large logistics area for the Russians if they can reach it. The village of Pokrovsk and the village of Holyai-Polye down here to the south. So you have the entire southern front is sort of moving in this direction. Now, will it be able to continue moving in this direction? Time will tell on that. We do know that Syrskyi just removed the commanders of the 17th and 20th Corps in this region due to recent Russian advances and failures of the Ukrainian armed forces to prevent said Russian advances. So lots of advances by the Russians and more to come in the coming days. Be sure to be on the lookout for my live streams. I do casual calibration now. There will be one today. This video should be posted right before that live stream at 2 p.m. 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Be sure to tune into that. Thank you all so much for your support and watching my videos. If you guys are new here, please subscribe. If you are here at all, please leave a like and comment if you so choose. That is the easiest way to support me. I thank you all so much. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you're enjoying this new format, and I will catch you guys in my live streams. Take care. Goodbye.